Good afternoon. Thank you all for making time to be here today. To my left, I'm joined by Alfonso David, who is counsel to the governor. To my right, Robert Mejica, who is the budget director, keeper of all the money. I keep him close. To Robert's right is Michael Schmidt, senior economic advisor to the governor. We want to give you an update on what we're doing on one of the most pressing issues that is facing this state, one of the most pressing attacks from the federal government, which is on literally the economic viability and economic strength of this state. And that is what the president did in the tax reform bill of last year and the targeted attack on New York State that was in that tax bill. As you recall, last December, the president passed a tax reform act. 80% of the benefits went to the top 1%. Corporations got an early Christmas present of a 40% tax break. And the blue states, quote unquote, the Democratic states, were actually targeted to pay more by the bill. Now, first, it was just a total reckless giveaway to the rich. Trump had just run a campaign saying he was there for the middle class, he was there for the hard-working men and women of this country. As soon as he gets into office, he turns around and he gives a tax cut to the richest 1%, on the theory that if you give the corporation a tax cut, maybe the corporation will turn around and give more money to the employees because the corporation received a tax break. So maybe they'll give more money to the employees. Yeah. The other way to do it is if you actually cared about the employees, give the employees the tax break. Don't give it to the corporate owner and hope that maybe they'll give it to the employees. Give it to the employees. You give it to the corporate owner, maybe he or she will give it to the employees. Or maybe they'll buy a new Ferrari. Or maybe they'll buy a new house in France, right? But it was one of the first and clearest signs of the president's total hypocrisy and duplicity. Many more have followed, but that was one of the first clear signs. It was also a direct assault on the state of New York. How? It ends the deductibility of state and local taxes. State and local taxes, hence SALT. It limited the deductibility of state and local taxes to $10,000 for both income taxes and property taxes combined. That is a dagger right at the heart of this state. Why? We have high local property taxes and a relatively high income tax. And it puts us at a structural disadvantage. It hurts our economic competitiveness. All the other states received a tax cut. Our state received a tax increase by eliminating the deductibility. This was the first time this was done in the history of the United States because it's a tax on our taxes. It's the federal government taxing state taxes. First double taxation in history. When Abraham Lincoln was passing the income tax, he said it was to be levied after the state and local taxes were deducted. So not since Abraham Lincoln. It was a pure politicalization. He wanted to hurt the states that didn't vote for him, period. It cost New York State $14 billion, going up to just under $16 billion annually. This is on top of the fact that New York State already is the #1 donor state, meaning we send more money to Washington than we get back. $48 billion more to Washington than we get back. Senator Daniel Patrick Moynihan, God bless his soul, used to make this point repeatedly, that we give more money to the federal government than any other single state in the country. This is not an academic exercise. This is not about politics. This directly affects the pocket of New Yorkers. And it hurts their number one asset, which is their home. It's already reducing home values in New York, and it hasn't even gone into effect yet. And this will make a real dent in the increase and equity of the home market. The equity in one's home tends to be the number one asset in most families' lives. We didn't take it laying down. When it happened, New York State took several actions. We decoupled from the federal tax law. We changed the state code to facilitate deductibility, and we filed a lawsuit against the government. Our action in the state allowed tax credits for donations to public schools and health care, which would allow a business or an individual to get a tax credit for the amount they give to the local healthcare system or local school system. Under existing federal law, that also allows them to deduct that amount from their federal income tax liability. After we did that, several other states that were targeted, blue states, did similar passages. The federal government retaliated and essentially said, you are trying to get around our penalty and our assault. You're trying to shield yourself. We don't want you to shield yourself. Shielding oneself is called self-defense. I throw something at you, your natural instinct is to raise your hands and try to cover yourself. They launch a missile at us. I'm the governor of the state of New York. My job is to try to put up a missile defense system, right? They then have the IRS put out a regulation that basically says what those states are trying to do to protect themselves, that is not valid, okay? To add insult to injury, the regulation they published had an unanticipated consequence that might also be, that may be negative to the red states, right? And now they changed course. And they've issued a clarification on the regulation they put out to say that regulation doesn't apply to corporations or businesses. Why did they do this? Because that regulation could also stop donations to what's called school choice programs. School choice programs are programs that the Republicans favor. They give you a deduction, state and local deduction, for donations to private schools, but not public schools. And they favor the donations to private schools. They wanted to make sure their program wasn't affected. So the Treasury Secretary puts out a clarifying statement in tandem with the IRS, saying, oh, that regulation only affects public schools, doesn't affect our private school choice program. The Republicans claim victory. Senator Toomey says, yes, our state voucher programs are fine. This would only affect the states that actually want to help the public schools, not the private schools. The IRS decision protects 14 red states that have the school tax credit program. Of the top 10 states who would benefit, 9 voted for Trump. So you have a clear pattern. You have a tax policy designed first to hurt the blue states, that's SALT. When they issue a regulation that might actually affect the red states, they come back and they clarify that regulation to make sure the red states aren't hurt. This is a pattern of politicizing official government functions. And it's a pattern that we see repeating. This is what Trump is doing with ICE. ICE was a police function. It was an enforcement agency that was created after 9/11 to battle terrorism. He now has it as a private squad that is there to enforce his political agenda and is running rampant on violating the Constitution and trampling people's rights. The Internal Revenue Service is supposed to be a regulatory body. It is not a political body. He has politicized the IRS, which is what they accused President Obama of doing, if you remember. They have actually done it. You have Senator Mnuchin doing a joint statement with the IRS saying, we want to make sure this doesn't affect the school choice program, which is our pet Republican program. I mean, they don't even hide the political influence on these agencies. The I in ICE and the I in the IRS does not stand for I, Trump. He is not a king. He is a president. And he is not a dictator. And he's subject to the Constitution. And he's subject to laws. And he cannot take the federal government, politicize it, politicize law enforcement agencies, politicize regulatory agencies to carry out his political agenda. And that's exactly what he is doing. They have to be stopped. We're taking 2 actions. First, we're sending a letter to the IRS today that says they have to reverse course or we will sue them. This is purely arbitrary, it's capricious, it's political. Second, we're going to send a letter to the Treasury Inspector General, point out the facts. This is pure political interference. This is the Treasury Secretary going to a regulatory agency and saying, enforce this political agenda. It is at a minimum unethical. It may very well be illegal. And the Inspector General should look at this and should look at the clear collaboration between the Treasury Secretary and the IRS. I would also ask an Inspector General, who's a bona fide Inspector General, ask Secretary Mnuchin, did you get a directive from the White House to pursue this political agenda? Where did this come from that you now carve out the school voucher program, which is supported by the largest Republican donors in the country? My job is to protect New Yorkers. This SALT deduction will depress home values, increases people's taxes. I passed a property tax cap that limited property tax growth to 2%. This, in 1 year, will increase property taxes on many homeowners 30%. 30%. And it will devalue the housing market in New York. It will increase income taxes as much as 30%. These 2 things combined are designed to hurt the economic competitiveness of New York. It makes it harder for us to compete with Florida and Texas and North Carolina because it takes our taxes, increases our taxes, while it decreases the taxes of the red states. That's what he is doing. It says we can't fund public schools and get a deduction, but you can fund private schools and religious schools and get a deduction. It is unconscionable, and it has to stop. Let me give you two other updates, and then whatever questions you have. Number one, there is a possibility that we will see a serious storm or ancillary effects of a serious storm. People have heard about the storm moving off Bermuda now, headed towards the United States. It's currently targeted for Carolinas, depending on what model you look at, but it will bring heavy rains to New York State, possible flooding to New York State. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday are the days that we are watching, and we are not yet deploying emergency operations, but we are watching it carefully. We're asking local governments to watch the situation carefully, and New Yorkers as citizens to be prepared and take precautions that are appropriate for their condition. The rain will be matched with heavy winds, and as you know, that's a difficult combination, and places that tend to be flood-prone or have issues with high winds should take precautions. We'll update you on that as it goes. Second, on the Tappan Zee Bridge, I want to make sure we're all clear and give you an update on where we are on the Tappan Zee Bridge. For those of you who aren't fully familiar, because you're in New York City, there is the new Mario Cuomo Bridge. Next to the new Mario Cuomo Bridge is the Tappan Zee Bridge, the old Tappan Zee Bridge. The old Tappan Zee Bridge is in the process of deconstruction. Some spans have been removed, but two large spans still exist. The large spans are being disassembled piecemeal and would be disassembled between now and next July is when the total demolition of the old bridge is scheduled for. The new bridge was supposed to open yesterday, the new span of the new bridge, which happens to be the span closest to the old Tappan Zee Bridge. As a bizarre coincidence, as they're preparing to open the new span, they're disassembling the old bridge, which is what they've been doing. They hear a loud noise on the old bridge, which causes them to do a series of inspections. They find a joint that is damaged, a joint that is ripped, and they believe the bridge shifted. The contractor has everyone get off the bridge, the old bridge, and stops the traffic on the new span until they know the condition of the old bridge. They are not allowing workers to go on the old bridge yet. They are afraid of the stability of the old bridge. They are running engineering models to analyze what that joint shift means, what load is now placed on other members of the bridge. They are not sure yet if a piece of the old bridge could fall or a significant portion of the old bridge could fall. What does this have to do with the new span? On one level, nothing. On another level, from a public safety point of view, if the old bridge falls, or a portion of the bridge falls, there's a very remote possibility that a piece could hit the new span. They don't believe it would damage the new span, but it could hit the new span. If you have traffic on the new span and the old bridge were to collapse, or part of it was to collapse, or part of it was to fall in the water, or part of it was to hit the new bridge, that could be a public safety issue. You have cars driving down the new span, and all of a sudden they see part of a bridge fall. Somebody could panic. There could be car accidents, etc. If a piece of the old bridge actually hit the new bridge, obviously, that would be a problem. The state does not own the old Tappan Zee Bridge. The contractor called Tappan Zee Contractors owns the old Tappan Zee Bridge. So it is not our bridge. We are not responsible for it. They are the ones deciding whether they can put people on it, whether it's structurally safe, and what to do about the old bridge. We need to know what's happening with the old bridge before we can put traffic on the new span, because we've been waiting for the new span for 1 year. The last thing we're going to do is threaten public safety for a day or so. They are still doing the analysis, and they still do not have a final answer on the stability of that portion of the old bridge. And as soon as we have a final answer, we will let you know.